The European Parliament has called for the EU to list Iran's Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization because of its role in the suppression of anti-government protesters. But as well as backing sanctions, European politicians have also begun sponsoring Iranian political prisoners. By communicating with ambassadors, other politicians and human rights organizations to draw attention to individual prisoners, they hope to prevent Iranian judges from handing down harsh sentences, including the death penalty.
He wanted to teach more young boys about Kung Fu for free. That was how much Syed Mohammad Hosseini loved the sport. But his dream was cut short just a few days into the new year.
They just killed him, like suddenly after 1 month of detention. A young man of 39 years old with a lots of dream.
Hosseini was one of hundreds of Iranians arrested and tried for taking part in the protests that broke out last September following the death of Jina Mahsa Amini in police custody. Daria Safai, an activist and member of parliament in Belgium, has followed Hosseini's case closely.
Can you imagine? You are living and one day they say, you don't have the right to live anymore because you protested for a girl who was innocent and was killed.
Safai is one of more than 250 parliamentarians across Europe who are directly raising the plight of the detained protesters. Thousands of people demonstrated against the heavy crackdowns at a rally in the French city of Strasbourg this week. Legislators say their aim is to put the regime of Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei under pressure to respond.
The person I adopted was Ibrahim Rigi, but now he's released on bail. We write the ambassadors, but in the one hand and the other hand, we put social media pressure so the regime knows that we are watching this person the whole time.
Political sponsorships are not new. Yet, this movement, coordinated by Iranian activists, is international and has been widely adopted by legislators in the EU and in countries like Australia and Canada. But it's not a guarantee that protesters will be freed, as Mohammad Hosseini's case shows. Already, 3 other young men arrested in the recent protests have been executed. And just this week, a former top Iranian intelligence officer joined the list.
People here say that they're tired of the regime's brutality and they're calling on the European Union to do something about it right now.
They want the notorious elite army unit, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, listed as a terror organization. That, politicians and activists hope, will force Tehran to halt the deadly crackdowns.
And for more on that, we are now joined by Mariam Claren, who's one of the activists in Germany promoting sponsorships for political prisoners in Iran. Mariam, about 300 parliamentarians from Germany and other countries have taken up sponsorships for specific political prisoners in Iran. Why is that?
Good morning. You know, as a daughter of a political prisoner, my mother, Nahi Tagavi, is detained in Iran unjustly. I know that publicity and speaking out about the prisoners is the only way to protect the prisoners. So after the brutal crackdown on the protesters, after the death of Mahsa Amini, activists in Germany came together and we thought, how can we help the prisoners? And we started this initiative and started recruiting MPs to take the sponsorship of the prisoners, to speak out about the prisoners, to closely watch the cases of the prisoners, to talk to media, but also put political pressure on authorities like the ambassador of the Islamic Republic in Iran in Germany.
Do you think that these sponsorships of political prisoners can actually prevent further executions?
This is a very difficult question because the regime is very unpredictable, and we saw recently that they executed 4 protesters. 2 of them had political sponsorships. But I think what is very important is that the regime knows and recognizes that the world is watching, and political persons in Germany and all of the world are watching. So prevent is a very difficult to say will there be no executions anymore? I doubt it, because we are talking about a brutal regime who is, since 43 years, putting repression on the people, crackdown, etc. But I think with the political sponsorships and while the world is watching, the price for doing this human rights violation is getting very high for the regime.
Now, the European Parliament is currently discussing further sanctions against Iran. Don't you think that sanctions are a useful way to put pressure on the regime, and are more sanctions needed?
The discussion of sanctions is very complex. I myself believe that individual sanctions on persons who are responsible for the crackdowns, human rights violation, etc., are a good way to put pressure on the regime. I think sanctions which harm the population of Iran are not a good idea. For example, sanctions which I know it very well, because we can't, for example, bring medicine into Iran because of the sanctions, or I cannot send anything to my mother who is in prison. But I think individual sanctions, especially on the authorities from the Revolutionary Guard Corps, is very important to put pressure on the regime.
Mariam Claren there, the Iran human rights activist here in Germany. Thank you very much for your time.